The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return, sponsored by Narconon Ojai.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. This is episode number 143. My name is Joni Siegel, and I'll be your hostess for today. I want to, again, wish everybody a Happy New Year. We are in mid-January, and I sincerely hope that if you need treatment, that you have reached out, or if you have a loved one who needs treatment, please reach out now. Don't wait. We want you to have a very sober and healthy new year. Just a reminder for you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and also subscribe on YouTube because we've got videos going up now. And if you give us a good rating, that helps other people find us. So please subscribe. Today we have something a little bit new. We have an interview, but it'll be with two people. Now, the first person is named Cali Estes. She's an author and highly sought after addiction therapist and life/corporate coach who specializes in harm reduction and utilizes holistic approaches to treat addiction, as well as mental conditions holding her clients back from reaching their full potential. Dr. Estes has over 20 years experience working with drug, alcohol, and food addictions. Her deep understanding of drug and alcohol addiction, including the behaviors and ramifications that are associated with it, place her at the top in the field of addiction therapy. Dr. Estes is an interactive, solution-focused, positive psychologist and cognitive behavioral therapist. Her unique, no-nonsense approach of cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, and life coaching combine to provide the perfect support for an addict. Dr. Estes is married to a professional musician named Timothy Estes. Tim plays drums for the Miami-based hard rock band Crowfly and has freelanced on drums for many other musical endeavors, including blues icon Eric Sardinas and New York City's rock powerhouse, the Deadly Z. Dr. Cali and Tim Estes continued to celebrate Tim's recovery from heroin addiction at their home in Miami, Florida. Tim plays drums professionally for rock bands, and he's touring occasionally while pursuing his lifelong dream to be a musician. It is through this marriage of two high-level professionals that we learn how little addiction cares about who we are or what we do before it tries to destroy us. And we've talked about that on the podcast many times. Addiction knows no economic status, no race, no religion. It affects everyone. So let's talk to Dr. Cali and Tim Estes. I want to thank you, Cali and Tim, for being on the podcast today. I know that every story that we tell on the podcast and every bit of valuable information, which I know you both have, resonates with our listeners. And, you know, we just want to reach at least one person with every podcast, if not more, so that they go, you know, I really need to get some help, or I really need to get my loved one into treatment. So thank you both for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So Tim, if we can, because I know you have your own history, if you could tell us your story, how you got involved with drugs and kind of that path for you.
Well, I guess it all started when I was 14. I was an athlete my entire life. I played baseball and basketball, football, but primarily baseball. At the time I was 14 years old, I went into one of my electives. I chose marching band, and I picked up the drums. And absolutely fell in love with drums, playing drums, writing music, reading music, anything to do with music. And I decided that I'd had enough of sports at the age of 14, and I wanted to be a musician. It caused a lot of friction between me and my dad. He was my baseball coach, and we had some relatives that actually went to the University of Kentucky. And there was some strings being pulled where I possibly could have, gone on to play high school baseball and on to college and who knows what. And I came home one day and just told my dad I was done with sports. I wanted to play in a rock band, and that didn't go over too well. But I did it anyway at the age of 14. And with that group, with musicians and alternative people with alternative lifestyles, it was my first experience with being around artistic people with alternative lifestyles, and to be honest, people that actually use drugs and alcohol. And I started drinking at the age of 14, going to band rehearsals, having a few beers, having a few mixed drinks. That lasted till I was about 17. And then I was introduced to cocaine at the age of 17. And I basically used cocaine recreationally on and off through a majority of my adult life, while I was in bands. I did some big things at a young age. Went out to Los Angeles with a couple bands, did a couple tours with signed artists. And one day at the age of, I want to say 40, 30, actually 38, I was introduced to Roxy's, oxycodone and roxycodone. And it was my first experience with any type of opiate. And
I've never heard of roxycodone. What is that?
It's the little blue pain pills that they give cancer patients. And they were real popular here in South Florida. They're just little blue. It's like it's a type of oxycodone, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a difference between that and oxycodone, or is it basically just like a brand name for it?
It's basically the same, but
shelf life's a little different.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not real sure on the difference between Oxy and Roxy. I know they're very similar and they basically do the same thing. They're both a high-powered opiate. But I had never, that's when I was introduced to physical addiction. With cocaine, it's more of a psychological addiction, to me anyway. But that's when I was really introduced to physical dependency. And that was the first time, I actually had to take a drug or I was going to get physically sick, physically ill. So I did the Roxys for about 6 months, and that was when the pill mills and everything here in South Florida were going crazy. And law enforcement really cracked down on that. And, I wasn't an experienced heroin user. And I was like, the people that were using with me, I'm like, what do we do now? And they're like, heroin. That's the choice. So I started doing street heroin to not get sick because I had no more availability to Roxy's, and it was much cheaper than Roxy's. I would say within 6 months of using heroin, it was just full-blown addiction. And I'll never forget, one of the people using with me said that they were like, heroin use is not a recreation, it's a lifestyle. So they were like, get ready for your lifestyle to change. And I was like, not me. I've done drugs for most of my adult life. Nothing's going to control me. And I was extremely wrong.
Wow. Cali, did you know Tim when he was addicted to heroin, or did that come later?
It actually came later, which is interesting because when we first met, he'd have a beer here and there and do a little Coke here and there. And it wasn't a big deal. It never really affected our relationship. So it never affected us financially. It never affected anything. And most of it was nowhere around me. He'd be out on tour with the band and do his thing and come home. So I didn't even know he was using heroin until about 6 months later because he was financially able to support it himself. Nothing was missing from the house. Everything was completely normal. Everything, including our sex life, was completely normal. And then it wasn't. And it's like he hit a wall all of a sudden, and the house of cards crumbled. And it was out of money. Things in the house started disappearing. He's disappearing. And next thing I know, I looked at him and I'm like, you're doing opiates. And he said, of course, no, I'm not. And I drug tested him, and sure enough, opiates. And then it was off to the races from there, because then it's like, now what do? And I had never seen anybody in my career, and I've been doing this 25 years, go from uppers their entire life all of a sudden to downers and make that switch. Either you're downers or uppers, or sometimes, you don't try at everything, but never consistently one direction and then just a switch. So it's interesting to me what happened. How did that happen? How did you get there? How did you get stuck there? And then more importantly, how do we get you out of there?
And Tim, how did you make that transition? I think you mentioned that you made the transition, but was there anything that happened specifically that got you onto oxycodone, or you just wanted to try it?
It was almost the identical way I was introduced to cocaine. It was just, recreationally, hey, you want to try this? And it was a buddy, and I tried the opiates, and I liked the warm, comfortable, fuzzy feeling. And I was like, hey, man, a couple days later, I wanted to do it again. And then the time span in between the days of me wanting to do it got shorter and shorter and shorter, to a point where before I knew it, it was every day. And then I remember I went through my first withdrawal, because for the first 30 to 60 days, I never got dope sick. And I remember asking the guy that was supplying me, I'm like, aren't I supposed to be getting sick when I don't have these? And he's like, yeah, don't worry, it's coming. And I'm like, no, I think I'm immune or something. I don't think I'm going to get sick. And I remember I went somewhere and I was out of town, and I ran out, and sure enough, 24 hours later, the sweats and the shaking and the vomiting and everything just hit me at once. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is dope sick.
Wow. So what made you want to get better? Was it Cali, or was it your own decision?
A number of things. First of all, I flatlined. I got a hold of some fentanyl, and I laid my three bags out on the cell phone like I did every day, and snorted them. And within a minute, I knew something didn't taste right, and I was like, I think I better turn around and go find my friend's house that lived in the area where I had scored drugs. And he said that I came up to his house, rang his doorbell. I don't even remember it. He said he came to the door, and I had known him for a while, and I asked for him. Like my brain was already shutting down. Like, I'm like, hey, is Willie here? And he's like, what's wrong with you, man? This is me. And I was like, listen, something's not right. Come out to the car. And he said by the time he put his clothes on and came out to the car, I was slumped over the wheel of the car and not breathing. So I woke up 45 minutes later in the back of an ambulance, and they had told me, they were like, you've got one hell of a friend, because you had flatlined. We had given you 2 shots of Narcan. We're supposed to basically declare you after a certain point, and he begged us to give you one more, and they gave me a 3rd shot of Narcan, and I finally coughed, and that's the point where they knew I was, pulling air. So they started really doing the resuscitation at that point, but that didn't stop me. I picked back up about 72 hours later, and the same thing happened about a year later, and that by that time everything was out between me and her. There was no more hiding it. And she was like, listen, you've basically died twice. I'm not going to stay married to this. You've got a choice. She's like, clean up, get sober, or get out. So
You cleaned up and got sober.
I did.
Smart decision.
Few bumps in the road. No one, I mean, getting clean is not a perfect little story of I decided not to use it. I never did again, and everything's cupcakes and butterflies, as she likes to say. There was a few bumps in the road, but it's been good for the last 2.5 years.
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast, or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com, or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com, or call us at 727-314-7080. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and give us a 5-star review. For more information on our sponsor, Narconon Ojai, visit their website at narcononojai.org. That's NARCONONOJAI.org. Or call 1-866-231-5924. That's 1-866-231-5924. Sometimes, the hardest thing about getting someone into recovery is getting them to agree to treatment. Bobby Newman, a certified drug counselor with 30 years' experience and an over 85% success rate as an interventionist, has created a series of 12 videos that you can use right now to learn every step to get your loved one to agree to treatment. Call 1-833-918-0008 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's quite an accomplishment, so very well done you.
Thanks.
So Cali, tell your side of this story.
So I didn't know about the first overdose. He kept that quiet. So I had no idea. And then I got in the mail, because we're married and our mail comes to the same place, I got a hospital bill for an emergency room visit and
Narcan shot.
a Narcan shot. I didn't say Narcan. It just said medication administration. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, oh, that's not me. You know, of course it's somebody else. And I think to myself, this is very odd. So of course I can't call the hospital because of HIPAA. I can't verify, is this him or not him? So I just kind of filed it away and we never got another one of those. It never came again. So I thought maybe it was a mix up, whatever. Then a year later, and there were a few other clues throughout that happening, but about a year later, I get this strange phone call from him and he says, I need you to come pick me up. And I said, where are you? And he said, I'm over on 79th Street. He goes, I think I got the BMW stolen. Like, you think or you know, and how do you think you get a car stolen? Well, he goes, I think I got rear-ended, and none of it made any sense. And my spidey senses went, you didn't get carjacked. You sold, you gave the car to the dealer. What did you do? So I race over there, I get there. He's got no shoes on, no shirt on, I don't know if you had your wallet. All he had was his phone. And I said, how did you get carjacked with no shoes? That just doesn't make sense. So he said, well, this guy bumped me and, he got out and he said, just give me some money instead of calling the insurance company. And I went in to use the ATM and I gave him some money and I came out and he took the car. And I'm looking at him and I said, I had always wanted to be an FBI agent. And right now, what you're telling me is garbage because I can read body language and I can figure this out. So what's really going on? And he finally came clean and he said, listen, I went to score some heroin. And on the way back, I guess I was nodded out. I got rear-ended. He goes, I don't remember anything. And the rest of the story went, he went into this bodega to take some money out of the ATM and he nodded out. And the guy came in to get the money and the shop owner called 911. He went to the ER, he was seen, and then he panicked because he had to call me. So he walked back 2 miles to where the car was, called me and tell me it was carjacked. Thank God we had LoJack. So I called 911 and I enabled the LoJack, find the car. And the guys that had taken the car were using BMWs and Mercedes to run into jewelry stores and do heists with, literally run into the front of the store and crash the car. And they had found our car full of guns and knives and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I was yelling at him and I'm like, do you realize how close you were to getting in trouble? And so that's kind of when I said to him, I'm really done with this craziness. This is insanity. And that's when he sat me down. He said, well, there's more. I'm like, more? What do you mean more? He said, well, this isn't the first time I flatlined. And I went, what? And that's what he told me about the first thing. And then he said another one. He was driving my Jeep on 95 and nodded at the wheel. And the cop came over and he talked himself out of the ticket. He told the cop he was in diabetic shock. And I'm looking at him going, how? Like, you're so, how you're in the middle of overdosing and lying about it, like just insanity. And that's what I said to him, make the decision, me or the drugs, because I am done with this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's unbelievable.
It is. Like, as a clinician, I hear it all day long. I hear my clients tell me these stories and I'm like, yeah, okay, because I stay neutral. But as a wife, you're sitting back going, wow, like, am I really married to this crazy town? And I'm here in the boat with you rowing, and when do I get out? So.
And you don't have to stay neutral.
Right, I don't. I can say, here's a divorce decree, out you go. There's your stuff. Good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
Were you a drug counselor or addiction counselor before he was addicted? Was that something you've always done? Okay.
I've done this for 25 years. This has been my, I wanted to be an FBI agent. And when I got my assistantship and my internship at the prison, I was the first female in a male prison. I went to SCI Rockview, and they told me I couldn't work with I wanted to work with the sex offenders and the violent offenders because I wanted to train for the BSU and the FBI. And they said, no, because you're female, we want to start you off with the drug addicts. And of course I went, oh, this is going to be boring. And my mentor, who was ex-CIA, he looks at me and he goes, really? You think that's going to be boring? And I'm like, yeah. And then 3 months later, I was loving it. I'm like, this is amazing. And he taught me body language. And I was so good at looking at somebody going, you're lying based upon how you stand and how your facial expressions are. And I became really good at it. So I stuck with it instead of joining the FBI.
Wow. Is that what your book is about?
I Married a Junkie is about his story and about me being a drug counselor and a wife not knowing what was happening. And then a little bit about my story. I was a food addict and a diet pill addict. And when I was studying addiction, well, before I studied addiction, I had gone to a counselor. And back then in the 90s, I didn't fit the DSM for a binge eater, a bulimic, and I didn't fit for an anorexic. So they said, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just fat. That's what's wrong with you. And they sent me to the fat doctor who went, wow, fen-phen's the new thing. Here you go. And I got on that, and I got on Ripfuel. And next thing you know, I'm 90 pounds. Going like this all day long, thinking it's normal, eating pizza and cake and doing whatever I want. And I started to have heart palpitations and ended up in the ER. I was 23. And the doctor said, you're going to die. And I went, oh, no, you're a good little addict. No, I'm not going to die. You're crazy. 6 months later, same thing, back in the ER, different doctor. This one, way more convincing. And he said, you have to stop. And that's when I stopped, and I started studying addiction in class in college. And I went, oh my God, that's me. I fit the profile for an addict because this fits. So then I started studying that and figured out how to heal myself through yoga and fitness. And once I did that, I said, I'm going to keep going with other people and help them. And then we had met, I was in my 30s. I was 34 by the time I met him. So, yeah.
Very cool. The reason why I asked you if it was in your book, because when you said that you know really well the body language of an addict, one of the things we've talked about on the podcast many times is, for parents or loved ones of addicts is like, how do you know? And one of the things we've always said is, well, you can always do a drug test, which you did with Tim. But I'm just wondering if what you know about body language is something that you could maybe write up for people.
Yeah, sure. I could write something up for your listeners, and you could do it as a giveaway. Yeah,
I would like that because, I think so often parents, as a good example, and not just parents, but it takes them by surprise. Like they don't know what to look for. Mm-hmm. And I think so often the addict is so convincing about, the lies that they tell. And I think that something like that, I think that would be very valuable. I've now given you a job to do.
And with her, it's not just body language. I've never been around someone, this is going to sound horrible. I don't want to say I've never been around someone that I can't lie to like her, but her, back when I was using, if I was trying to get away with something or not be honest about something over the phone, she could tell I was lying through my voice inflection. And she was like, no, I can tell by the way that you're flatlined in your voice, or your voice inflection is doing this or that or that. She said, you're not telling me the truth. And I'm like, what in the hell is she doing? she could just figure it out. But yeah, she's got a knack for it, that's for sure.
Well, that's awesome. But I think if there's anything like that you can share.
It has a lot to do with heart rate. When you go to tell a lie, you automatically get anxious, right? Okay, I'm going to lie about this. Will they believe me? So unless you know how to slow down your heart rate and relax your voice, you're instinctively going to go up an octave or two. And I'm going to hear that because I know your voice tone and I know what you normally sound like. And I have a baseline. So if I have a baseline, when you lie, I already know it's off a baseline. I know it sounds completely different. So for the parents listening, ask your child a neutral question, like, what is your name? Okay, my name is Sandy. You hear their voice inflection. Then ask them to say their name is Mary. It's a lie. And they're going to go, why? Say your name is Mary. Well, my name is Mary. Their voice is going to change, even if it changes a little. And if you can learn to listen in between the lines and hear their voice change, that's how you know they're lying without even looking at them. And then when you're looking at them, there's eye movements left and right. There's looking up, there's looking down, there's stepping back, there's shoulders, touching your face, touching your chest, doing this. There's a lot of things you can do when you're about to tell a lie versus, being in the lie. Once you're in the lie, you've committed. Now you've got to lie. And then when the person says you're lying, then it's a whole different reaction. So yeah, I can write that up for your listeners and they can take a look at that and see if their child is lying.
I think that would be interesting because I think, like I say, I think parents just don't know when their kids are lying. Now, it may be that they don't want to think they are, but even still, if they have some good information, like some tells, if you will, they say gamblers have tells.
Oh yeah.
I think that would be very helpful. Tim, what did you do to get sober? Did you go to treatment? Did you do some sort of rehab?
I did a 6-month residential rehab earlier before opiates, which didn't really. It was 12-step based and things like that. I stayed sober for a little bit of time, but as far as this last time with the opiates recently in my later adult life, I did a detox, which was 7 days. It was supposed to be 10 days, but I did it in 7. And then, so I detoxed and then we hired we outsourced a sober coach. I didn't want to use her. She was too close to it. And we talked about it. She was like, should I do it? Should we So we ended up outsourcing with a sober coach for a few months. And then once I had a little bit of time separated and I had a grasp on being clean, I actually started helping people on a small scale with some of her clients, doing sober coaching on a smaller level because I didn't have enough clean time, but doing some of the smaller things that she needed done, like taking people to meetings, taking people to sober events. So I was constantly throwing myself into those surroundings and those type of people, and it just kept snowballing and getting more time, and that's how.
The most important part.
What?
I dragged him to acupuncture.
Oh God!
And he was in the middle of detox. I took him to acupuncture.
Oh.
We're gonna go to acupuncture. We're gonna go to the gym. We're gonna take vitamins.
Yeah, we know that's another thing. She got me on some natural supplements, which I thought was hosh and I was like, this stuff isn't going to work, and because I was raised big pharma and anything that came on the TV and said it was good for me. My parents said it was good for me. So I didn't believe anything natural. I can't do anything. Those are just horse pills. And she got me on these natural supplements,
amino acids,
to start repairing my brain and things like that. And I started feeling better instantly. My energy level went up, my cravings went down, my sleep went back to normal, my sleep patterns. I stopped getting body aches, I stopped getting cramps. And I'm asking her, why am I not cramping anymore? She's like, well, that's potassium. You need to get this and that. And why is my face not stinging anymore? Because your amino acids are back to normal. Just everything started balancing out. And she really got me into believing that, nutrition and supplements are just as important as anything else in recovery, as far as building your body back up and building, repairing the brain and things like that. So,
and you're absolutely correct, because the drugs, they kill off various good cells, good, good things in the body. And so once you stop taking the drugs, then you have to put all that back. And that's what nutrition is very good. The other thing that you said, which I think is huge, not to evaluate for you, but what really sits with me is helping other people.
Yeah.
And that's that there, you can't put a price on that. And I think it's so important because it takes you out of your head and into helping other people. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. Once I had 18 months, well, no, it was right after I had about a year clean. She sent me on an assignment for a guy that was an alcoholic, and his family had thrown a family reunion on a cruise boat. And like, you know, what do most people go on cruises to do? To drink. So he hired her to set him up with a sober coach, and actually would go on the cruise with him and just be a friend and help him not drink. And that was the coolest job ever. I got to go to the Caribbean and get up every morning at 8 o'clock and have coffee with this guy and make sure he didn't drink, and, you know, go around the islands and do things and just make sure that he just didn't pick up a drink. And that was the coolest job ever.
That's awesome. Tim, tell me what you're doing going forward with your music. I would like to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm in a band called Crowfly, and it's an all original rock band out of Miami. We had done some tours, Texas, Tennessee. We went out to California and back. Played some shows with some bigger bands around here, and we just took about 90 days off. Our singer had a kid, and we took a little time off, and we put out a 5-song EP that did really well, and did a little touring behind it. And we've just recently gotten back in the studio to start writing a follow-up EP, and we're going to be playing shows and going back out on the road as soon as we get the second EP finished.
That's awesome.
The band it's a rock band. The band's name is Crowfly, and we've got tons of material all over the internet, and really looking forward to the second EP and getting back out there. I love entertaining and love playing music live. It's the best feeling in the world.
I would agree. I am a singer, so I would definitely agree. If people want to know more about Crowfly, how can they do that?
There we have
crowflyrocks.com is their website.
Yep, Crowfly Rocks, plural, rocks.com is our website. Or you can go to reverbnation.com/Crowfly Rocks, plural again. Or you can just go to YouTube and type Crowfly in the search bar, and we've got videos for days up there. Live performances, videos. Fans have made lyric videos for us and posted them. It's been a lot of fun.
That's great. And Cali, what's next for you? What's coming down the pike for you?
So we have the book, Married a Junkie, which came out about a year ago. I have a new book dropping January 1. And it's called The 7 Keys to Tap into the Wealth Inside You. And it's all about self-help and getting rid of limiting belief systems, making peace with money, and creating a roadmap and figuring out purpose and passion in life. Because as I'm working with my clients, I'm doing all this stuff. So I put it together in a book, and I thought, you know what, this is like recovery 2.0 kind of stuff. The next thing, what do I do now? I got the drug addiction under control. Now what? Now you quit smoking. Now you work out. Now you eat healthy. Now you figure out your purpose. So that's what I'm working on.
That's awesome. Tim, if you had just one message for our listeners, what would that be?
Oh God, I can think of a million of them right now. You know, the most important thing is if you are caught up in addiction right now, even if you're in active use right now and you're at the end of the rope and you feel like, you know, there's no hope, there always is. It's just a phone call away. You just gotta pick up the phone, call somebody, get some help. There's always going to be somebody out there that knows how to get you help that would fit into your lifestyle or your economic factors or whatever it is. Somebody will get you help. Just pick up the phone.
Exactly. And Cali, what would be one message you would give to our listeners?
Well, addiction's not your problem. It's your solution to a problem. I want to know what your problem is. If I can help you fix your problem, you won't need that drug or drink or sex or whatever it is you're using to feel better. It's your coping mechanism.
Exactly. I want to thank you both again for taking the time to be on the podcast. I think that you both have a good story individually and together. And I know that every story that we tell resonates with someone. So I really appreciate you both being on the podcast.
We
Thank you for
appreciate you
having
having
us.
us.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I thought it was very interesting, and I am excited to see what Cali writes up about body language, because if you are a parent and you're not sure if your child is addicted, or if you are a child and you're not sure if your parent is addicted, I think that learning some of the body language would be valuable in addition to getting a drug test done. Once again, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and also subscribe on YouTube and give us a good rating so that more and more people will find us and find the message of hope. What Tim said is exactly what we say. Just reach out. Don't wait. Do it now. But reach out if you need help, or if you need help for a loved one. Reach out and get it. It's there. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return, sponsored by Narconon Ojai. For more information on Narconon Ojai, call 866-231-5924 or visit www.narcononojai.org. Narconon is a non-12-step rehabilitation program based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard.